I still remember the day my granddaughter's mother passed away. She was only 12, and I knew I had to take her in. My wife and I had always been close to her, and we knew we had to give her the love and support she needed during that difficult time. As the years went by, I watched her grow into a beautiful young woman. She was smart, talented, and had a heart of gold. Or so I thought. I've always been proud of her, and I've done my best to provide for her every need. I remember the day she came to me and told me she wanted to go to college. I was overjoyed. I knew it was a big decision, but I was willing to do whatever it took to help her achieve her dreams. I gave her $80,000 to cover her tuition fees, and I was happy to see her thrive in her studies. Or so I thought. It wasn't until recently that I discovered the truth. She's been using the money I gave her to fund her own lavish lifestyle. She's been buying expensive clothes, going on luxurious vacations, and living a life that's far beyond her means. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe the person I trusted most could betray me like this. I couldn't understand why she would do something so hurtful and deceitful. I kept asking myself, how could she do this to me? As I sat in my chair, trying to process what had just happened, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness and betrayal. I thought about all the times I'd given her money, all the times I'd supported her, and all the times I'd been there for her. And this is how she repays me. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her, to ask her why she did what she did. But another part of me just wanted to sit in silence, to process my emotions and try to make sense of it all. As I sat there, I couldn't help but think about the future. What would happen next? Would I ever be able to trust her again? And what about our relationship? Would it ever be the same? I didn't have the answers to these questions, but I knew one thing: I had to take action. I had to do something to protect myself, to protect my finances, and to protect my heart. I just didn't know what that something was, yet. I sat in silence for what felt like hours, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and hurt. I couldn't believe that my own granddaughter could deceive me in such a way. I thought about all the times I'd helped her, all the times I'd been there for her, and all the times I'd given her my love and support. As I sat there, I heard a knock at the door. It was my wife, coming to check on me. She could see the look on my face and knew something was wrong. "What's wrong, dear?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I took a deep breath and told her everything. I told her about the money, about my granddaughter's deceit, and about my feelings of hurt and betrayal. My wife listened attentively, her expression growing more and more shocked with each passing moment. When I finished, she took my hand in hers and looked me straight in the eye. "We'll get through this together," she said. "We'll figure out what to do next and we'll do it together." I nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude towards her. She was always there for me, no matter what. But as we sat there, trying to come up with a plan, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. I knew that I had to confront my granddaughter, but I was scared. I was scared of what she might say, of what she might do, and of what might happen to our relationship. As the hours passed, my anxiety grew. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't concentrate on anything. All I could think about was my granddaughter and what she had done. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I knew I had to take action. I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I had to confront her, no matter how scared I was. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. I dialed her number, my heart racing with anticipation. As the phone rang, I felt my anxiety grow. What would she say? What would she do? And then, just as I was starting to think that she wasn't going to answer, I heard her voice. "Hello," she said, sounding cheerful and carefree. I took another deep breath and launched into the conversation. "We need to talk," I said, trying to sound calm. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought I'd lost the connection. "What's up, Grandpa?" she asked, sounding a little more cautious. I took a deep breath and told her everything. I told her about the money, about her deceit, and about my feelings of hurt and betrayal. As I spoke, I could feel my anger growing. How could she do this to me? How could she betray me in such a way? And then, just as I was starting to get really angry, I heard her response. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," she said, sounding tears. "I was in a tight spot and I didn't know what to do. I promise it won't happen again." I felt a pang of doubt. Was she telling the truth? Was she really sorry? Or was she just trying to manipulate me, to get me to forgive her and forget what she'd done? I didn't know what to believe. All I knew was that I was hurt, I was angry, and I was scared. And as I sat there, trying to decide what to do next, I heard a knock at the door. It was my wife, come to check on me again. "How did it go?" she asked, looking concerned. I shook my head, feeling a sense of uncertainty. "I don't know," I said. "I just don't know what to believe." My wife nodded, taking my hand in hers. "We'll figure it out together," she said. "We'll get to the bottom of this and we'll make sure that justice is served." I nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude towards her. But as we sat there, trying to come up with a plan, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. What would happen next? Would my granddaughter tell the truth? Or would she continue to deceive me? And what about our relationship? Would it ever be the same again? I didn't have the answers to these questions, but I knew one thing: I had to keep fighting. I had to keep fighting for the truth, for justice, and for our relationship. No matter what it took. As the days passed, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. I kept thinking about my granddaughter's words, wondering if she was telling the truth or just trying to manipulate me. My wife and I decided to do some digging, to see if we could find out more about what had really happened. We started by talking to some of our granddaughter's friends, trying to get a sense of what had been going on. But every time we asked a question, we got a different story. Some of her friends said that she had been struggling financially, that she had been working multiple jobs just to make ends meet. Others said that she had been spending money recklessly, that she had been going on expensive vacations and buying fancy clothes. We didn't know what to believe. We also decided to check her bank statements, to see if we could find any evidence of what she had been doing with the money. But when we got the statements, we were shocked to see that they were almost completely empty. There were no records of any large transactions, no evidence of her spending money on anything extravagant. It was as if she had just vanished the money into thin air. My wife and I were getting more and more frustrated. We didn't know what to do, or where to turn. We felt like we were stuck in a never-ending cycle of confusion and uncertainty. And then, just as we were starting to feel like we were at our wits' end, we received a call from an unknown number. "Hello." I answered, feeling a sense of trepidation. "Is this Mr. Johnson?" a voice asked. "Yes, it is," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "My name is Sarah," the voice said. "I'm a friend of your granddaughter's. I think I might have some information that could help you." My heart started racing as I listened to Sarah's words. What did she know? What could she tell us? "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know if I should be telling you this," Sarah said hesitantly. "But I think you have a right to know. Your granddaughter has been in some trouble lately. She's been involved with some people who aren't very good for her." My heart sank as I listened to Sarah's words. What kind of trouble was my granddaughter in? What kind of people was she involved with? "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my cool. "I mean that she's been hanging out with some people who are involved in some shady dealings," Sarah said. I don't know all the details, but I know it's not good. And I think she might be in over her head. My wife and I exchanged a worried glance. What was our granddaughter involved in? And how could we help her? We asked Sarah to meet with us, to tell us more about what was going on. She agreed, and we set up a time to meet. As we hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. What were we getting ourselves into? And what would we find out when we met with Sarah? I didn't know, but I was determined to find out the truth. No matter what it took. As the day of the meeting approached, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. What would Sarah tell us? And what would we do with the information? I didn't know, but I was ready to face whatever came next. I was ready to fight for my granddaughter, and for the truth. As the day of the meeting approached, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. What would Sarah tell us? And what would we do with the information? I didn't know, but I was ready to face whatever came next. I was ready to fight for my granddaughter, and for the truth. The day of the meeting arrived, and my wife and I made our way to the designated location. We had chosen a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town, hoping to avoid any unwanted attention. As we sat down at a table, I couldn't help but notice the nervous look on my wife's face. She was worried, and I couldn't blame her. We didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, and the unknown was always a source of fear. Just as we were starting to get comfortable, Sarah walked in. She was a petite woman with long brown hair and a kind face. She spotted us immediately and made her way over to our table. "Hi," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah." We exchanged pleasantries, and then Sarah got straight to the point. "I'm not sure where to start," she said, looking nervous. "But I think it's best if I just tell you everything." My wife and I leaned in, eager to hear what Sarah had to say. "Your granddaughter has been involved with some people who are not very good for her," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're a group of individuals who are involved in some shady dealings, and they've been using your granddaughter for their own gain." My heart sank as I listened to Sarah's words. What had my granddaughter gotten herself into? And how could we help her? "What kind of shady dealings?" my wife asked, her voice firm. Sarah hesitated, looking around the coffee shop nervously. "I'm not sure if I should be telling you this," she said. "But I think you have a right to know. They're involved in some kind of money laundering scheme, and they've been using your granddaughter to help them." My wife and I exchanged a shocked glance. Money laundering? How had our granddaughter gotten involved in something like that? How did she get involved? I asked, trying to keep my cool. Sarah took a deep breath before answering. "She met one of the individuals involved in the scheme through a friend," she said. "They promised her a lot of money and a sense of excitement, and she fell for it." I felt a wave of anger wash over me. Who were these people, and how could they do this to my granddaughter? "Do you know who the individual is?" my wife asked, her voice firm. Sarah nodded, her eyes locked on ours. "Yes, I do. His name is Alex, and he's the ringleader of the group." My wife and I exchanged a determined glance. We were going to find out more about Alex and his group, and we were going to make sure that our granddaughter was safe. But as we left the coffee shop, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were in over our heads. What were we up against? And how could we possibly take on a group of people involved in money laundering? I didn't know, but I was determined to find out. I was determined to fight for my granddaughter, no matter what it took. As we walked back to our car, my wife turned to me with a worried look on her face. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, unsure of what to say. Were we doing the right thing? Or were we just making things worse? I didn't know, but I knew one thing: we had to try. We had to try to help our granddaughter, no matter what the cost. As we drove back home, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. We had just received some disturbing information, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. My wife was quiet, lost in her own thoughts, and I knew she was feeling the same way. We both knew that we had to do something, but we weren't sure what. We couldn't just sit back and do nothing, not when our granddaughter was involved. As we pulled into our driveway, I noticed a car parked across the street. It was a black sedan, and it looked out of place in our quiet neighborhood. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I realized that it might be related to Alex and his group. I pointed it out to my wife, and she looked at it with a mixture of fear and concern. "What do you think it means?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head, unsure of what to say. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it couldn't be good. We got out of the car and approached the house, our eyes fixed on the sedan. As we walked, I noticed that the windows were tinted, and I couldn't see inside. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that we might be in danger. We got inside the house and locked the door, our hearts racing with anticipation. We knew that we had to be careful, that we couldn't let our guard down. As we sat down in the living room, I couldn't help but think about our granddaughter. What was she involved in? And how could we help her? I looked at my wife, and I knew she was thinking the same thing. We were in this together, and we would do whatever it took to protect our granddaughter. As we sat there, trying to make sense of everything, I heard a knock at the door. It was a soft knock, almost hesitant. I looked at my wife, and she looked back at me with a mixture of fear and concern. Who could it be? And what did they want? I got up and approached the door, my heart racing with anticipation. I looked through the peephole, and my eyes widened in surprise. It was our granddaughter, standing on the porch with a look of fear on her face. I opened the door, and she rushed in, her eyes fixed on us. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I was in trouble, and I didn't know what to do." My wife and I exchanged a look, and then we both hugged our granddaughter tightly. We knew that we had to forgive her, that we had to help her. We were a family, and we would stick together, no matter what. But as we held our granddaughter, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. What had she gotten herself into? And how could we help her? I knew that we had to find out more, that we had to get to the bottom of everything. And I was determined to do just that. I was determined to fight for our granddaughter, no matter what it took. As we stood there, holding each other tightly, I knew that we were in for a long and difficult journey. But I was ready, and I knew that my wife and granddaughter were ready too. We would face whatever came our way, together, as a family. As we stood there, holding each other tightly, I knew that we had to talk about what had happened. We had to know the truth about our granddaughter's involvement with Alex and his group. I gently pulled back and looked at my granddaughter, my eyes searching for answers. "Tell us what happened," I said, my voice soft but firm. My granddaughter took a deep breath and began to explain. She told us about how she had met Alex through a friend, and how he had promised her a lot of money and a sense of excitement. She told us about how she had gotten in over her head, and how she didn't know how to get out. As she spoke, I could see the fear and uncertainty in her eyes. I knew that she was telling the truth, and that she was scared. My wife and I listened intently, our hearts aching with worry. We knew that we had to help our granddaughter, but we didn't know where to start. As our granddaughter finished speaking, I heard a noise outside. It was a faint rustling sound, like someone was trying to sneak around the house. I exchanged a worried glance with my wife, and we both knew that we had to be careful. I slowly got up and approached the window, trying to see what was going on. As I looked out, I saw a figure lurking in the shadows. It was a man, and he was trying to stay hidden. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I realized that he might be one of Alex's associates. I slowly backed away from the window, trying not to make any noise. My wife and granddaughter were watching me, their eyes wide with fear. I mouthed a warning to them, telling them to stay quiet. We all knew that we had to be careful, that we didn't know what was going on. As we stood there, frozen in fear, I heard the sound of footsteps outside. They were light and stealthy, like someone was trying to sneak up on us. I knew that we had to do something, that we couldn't just sit there and wait. I slowly got up and approached the door, my heart racing with anticipation. I knew that I had to protect my family, no matter what. As I reached the door, I heard the sound of a key being inserted into the lock. I felt a surge of fear as I realized that someone had a key to our house. I knew that we were in grave danger, and that we had to act fast. I slowly turned the handle and opened the door, my heart pounding in my chest. As I looked out, I saw a figure standing in the shadows. It was Alex, and he was smiling at me with a cruel grin. "Welcome to the party," he said, his voice dripping with malice. I knew that we were in trouble, and that we had to get out of there as fast as we could. But as I looked at Alex, I knew that we were trapped. He had us right where he wanted us, and we didn't know how to escape. As I looked at Alex, I felt a surge of anger and fear. How could he do this to us? How could he put our family in danger like this? I knew that I had to protect my family, no matter what. I stood tall and looked Alex straight in the eye. "You're not welcome here," I said, my voice firm. Alex just laughed. "Oh, I think I am," he said. "You see, I have something that belongs to you. Something that you want very badly." He pulled out a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside, I saw a small note that read, "Meet me at the old warehouse at midnight. Come alone." My heart sank as I realized that Alex had been playing us all along. He had been using our granddaughter to get to us, to get what he wanted. I felt a wave of anger wash over me, and I knew that I had to act. I charged at Alex, but he was too quick. He dodged out of the way and pulled out a gun. "I don't think so," he said, pointing the gun at me. My wife and granddaughter screamed as I stood there, frozen in fear. But then, something unexpected happened. The police burst into the room, guns drawn. "Alex, you're under arrest," one of the officers said. Alex looked shocked and angry, but he didn't put up a fight. He was handcuffed and read his rights, and then he was taken away. As the police led Alex out of the house, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was finally over. We were safe. My wife and granddaughter hugged me tightly, tears of joy streaming down their faces. "We're so sorry," my granddaughter said, her voice shaking. "We were so blind. We didn't see what was happening right in front of us." I hugged her tightly, holding her close. "It's not your fault," I said. "You were manipulated and used. But we're together now, and we're safe. That's all that matters." As we hugged, I felt a sense of closure and satisfaction. Justice had been served, and our family was safe. But then, something else happened. The police officer who had arrested Alex came back into the room. "We have something to show you," he said, holding out a small notebook. This was found in Alex's pocket. "It's a ledger of all his transactions, including the ones he made with your granddaughter." I took the notebook, my heart racing with anticipation. As I flipped through the pages, I saw that Alex had been involved in a large-scale money laundering scheme. And my granddaughter's name was all over it. But then, I saw something else. A name that made my heart skip a beat. The name of the person who had been behind it all, the person who had orchestrated the entire thing. It was a name that I knew well, a name that I had trusted. It was the name of my business partner, the person who had been with me since the beginning. I felt a wave of shock and betrayal wash over me. How could he do this to me? How could he betray me like this? I looked up at the police officer, my eyes wide with anger. I want him arrested, I said, my voice firm. I want him brought to justice. The police officer nodded, a smile on his face. We'll take care of it, he said. And with that, my business partner was arrested and charged with his crimes. Justice had been served, and our family was safe. As we walked out of the house, arm in arm, I felt a sense of closure and satisfaction. It was finally over, and we could start to heal. We could start to rebuild our lives and move on from the trauma we had experienced. And as we walked, I knew that we would be okay. We would be okay because we had each other, and because we had the truth.